It was a chilly evening in the small town, and the neon sign of Clint Eastwood's diner flickered in the darkness, casting a soft glow on the quiet street. The diner had been Clint's pride and joy, a place where people came for a good meal and a warm, welcoming atmosphere. He had put a lot of money into it, not because he needed to, but because he wanted to create something that was more than just a restaurant. He wanted to create a space that felt like home for everyone who walked through the door. Clint, however, had never been the type of CEO to sit behind a desk and make decisions from afar. He believed in getting his hands dirty, understanding what worked and what didn't, and most importantly, connecting with the people who made the place run. So one evening, after a long day of meetings and corporate events, Clint decided to do something unexpected. He would visit his diner, but he would do so incognito. No entourage, no attention. Just him, as a regular customer, seeing how his diner was running without anyone knowing who he was. He walked into the diner wearing a simple jacket and baseball cap, his face obscured just enough so no one would recognize him immediately. The familiar smell of sizzling food and freshly brewed coffee hit him as soon as he stepped inside. The diner was moderately busy, the hum of conversation mixing with the clatter of plates and silverware. Clint sat down at a booth near the back, his eyes scanning the room. He didn't want to make a scene, so he kept to himself, observing the staff and the customers as they went about their evening. He could hear snippets of conversation, people talking about their days, laughing, and enjoying their meals. But it was the waitstaff that caught his attention. The young woman behind the counter had just taken an order and was walking back toward the kitchen, her shoulders slumped, her face weary. Clint observed her for a moment, sensing something wasn't quite right. She was polite to the customers, but there was a sadness in her eyes, a sense of exhaustion that went beyond the typical day's work. He couldn't help but wonder what was going on behind the scenes. Clint sat quietly, observing the diner's operations as the night unfolded. The familiar buzz of conversation, the clinking of silverware, and the hum of the kitchen staff preparing food created a comforting, almost nostalgic atmosphere. However, his focus remained on the young woman behind the counter. She was doing her job, yes, but Clint noticed the way she kept glancing at the clock and the sighs that seemed to escape her whenever she thought no one was looking. It wasn't just the physical exhaustion of the job. There was something deeper, something that Clint could sense, a quiet frustration that seemed to hover in the air. As the evening progressed, Clint could tell that the diner wasn't running as smoothly as it usually did. The food came out slower, the conversations between staff members seemed more strained, and a general unease had settled into the atmosphere. The young woman, whose name tag read Emily, seemed to be at the center of it all. She was trying to keep up with the orders, but Clint could see the stress piling on her, the anxiety creeping into her movements. She had taken a seat behind the counter for a brief moment, holding her head in her hands, clearly overwhelmed. It wasn't something that Clint had expected to find in his own diner, and it troubled him. But what troubled him even more was the fact that no one seemed to notice the toll it was taking on Emily. No manager, no supervisor, no one appeared to be stepping in to offer support. Clint had seen enough. Without drawing attention to himself, he stood up and walked to the counter, pulling out a seat next to Emily. She didn't notice him at first, her mind preoccupied with the overwhelming tasks in front of her. "Tough night?" Clint asked, casually, keeping his tone friendly and nonchalant. Emily jumped, clearly startled by the voice, and looked up. Her eyes widened slightly, and she quickly straightened up, trying to compose herself. "Oh, I'm sorry, sir," she stammered. "I didn't mean to. I'm just trying to get everything done." Clint smiled softly, his expression warm but understanding. "It's okay, you're doing fine, but it looks like you're carrying a lot on your shoulders. Anything I can do to help?" Emily looked at Clint, still unsure of how to respond. There was something about the way he spoke, calm, unhurried, that made her feel a little more at ease. She hadn't expected a random customer to show concern for her, especially not in the middle of a hectic night. "I'm fine," she said, quickly trying to brush off the question, but Clint could see right through her, the fatigue and frustration written all over her face. He gave her a soft, reassuring smile. "You don't have to pretend with me," he said gently. "I've seen enough to know when someone's struggling." Emily hesitated for a moment, then let out a long, tired sigh. It's just this place, this job, it's been harder lately. There's a lot to juggle and I feel like no one really notices. I'm just exhausted, and it feels like I'm doing it all alone. Clint nodded, understanding exactly what she was saying. The long hours, the pressure to keep everything running smoothly, and the feeling of being unseen. It wasn't something new to him. He had spent years in the public eye, but even with fame, he knew what it felt like to be exhausted, to carry burdens without anyone noticing. I get it, Clint said quietly. I've been in your shoes more times than I can count. Emily looked at him a little taken aback. You? Really? Clint chuckled softly. Yeah. I've been around long enough to know that hard work doesn't always come with recognition, but that doesn't mean it's not worth it. And it definitely doesn't mean you should have to carry it all by yourself. There was a brief pause as Emily took in his words, the weight of her situation slowly starting to feel lighter. Clint leaned in slightly, lowering his voice so only she could hear. You're doing something important here, Emily. This diner, it's your heart and soul. People come here for more than just the food. They come for the atmosphere you create, and don't ever forget that. Emily's eyes softened, and for the first time that evening, a small smile tugged at the corner of her lips. Thanks, she said quietly, the words carrying a quiet gratitude. Clint smiled back, the kind of smile that spoke volumes without needing any further explanation. No problem, he said, standing up from the counter. Take care of yourself, all right? This place can't run without you. As Clint made his way to the door, he glanced back at Emily, who was standing a little taller now, a faint spark of hope in her eyes that hadn't been there when he first entered. He could tell she had taken his words to heart, that she felt seen and heard for the first time that night. It wasn't a huge change, but it was a start, and sometimes that was all it took. Clint stepped outside into the cool night air, his mind clearer now than when he'd arrived. His brief encounter with Emily had reminded him of something that so many people forgot. No matter how much success or fame you achieved, the simple act of treating others with kindness, of showing that you cared, could have a profound impact. He had created his diner to bring people together, to offer a space for everyone, no matter their background. But tonight he realized that sometimes, even the best intentions needed a little extra attention. The next morning, Clint returned to the diner, this time without any disguise. He walked in as the CEO, but more importantly, he walked in as someone who wanted to see firsthand how his business was really running. As he approached the counter, Emily spotted him immediately. She was behind the counter, looking more confident than the night before, and when their eyes met, she gave him a small, surprised smile. Clint walked up to her, his expression warm. "How's everything going today?" he asked casually. Emily, now a little more comfortable, looked up at him, her smile more genuine. "It's going well, actually. Things are starting to feel better." Clint nodded, pleased with her response. "I'm glad to hear it." He paused for a moment, then added, "Listen, I know running a diner is tough. If there's anything you need, help with staff, better training, anything, let me know. I'm here to make sure this place runs smoothly, but more than that, I want to make sure you and everyone else working here have what you need to do your best." Emily blinked, clearly taken aback by his offer. "Thank you, Mr. Eastwood," she said, her voice soft with appreciation. I didn't think you cared that much." Clint smiled, his eyes filled with understanding. "It's not about caring about the business, Emily. It's about caring about the people who make it work." As the day went on, the change in the diner was palpable. The staff seemed more energized, their interactions smoother, and there was a palpable shift in the atmosphere. It wasn't that the diner had suddenly turned into a high-end luxury restaurant. It was still the same humble place that people loved, but now there was a renewed sense of purpose. Emily worked with a new sense of confidence, her earlier exhaustion replaced by a drive that was hard to ignore. Clint, sitting at a booth near the back, watched the transformation unfold with a quiet satisfaction. He hadn't expected the immediate changes, but he was glad to see it. Sometimes all it took was showing someone that they mattered. that their hard work was recognized, and that they didn't have to carry the weight of everything alone. As the dinner rush settled into a quieter lull, Clint stood up and walked over to Emily, who was wiping down the counter. She looked up, surprised, but Clint gave her a warm smile. "How are you holding up?" he asked, his voice kind. Emily smiled back, this time without hesitation. "Better, a lot better. I feel like I can handle things now." Clint nodded. "Good. That's what I like to hear." He paused for a moment before continuing, his voice growing more serious. "I want you to know something, Emily. You don't have to do it all on your own. If you ever feel overwhelmed, don't hesitate to reach out. And if there's anything else you need, whether it's support, resources, or just a break, I'm here." Emily stood there for a moment, absorbing his words. Then she nodded, a sense of gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Eastwood. I don't think I've ever had anyone offer that before." Clint gave her a knowing smile. "You're welcome, but you deserve it. You've earned it." With that, Clint turned to leave, but not before pausing at the door to take one last look around the diner. This was what he had wanted all along, a place that didn't just serve food but served people, built community, and supported the ones who made it all possible. He knew that running a business was about more than just the profits. It was about the people, the ones who made it work every day. And in that moment, Clint Eastwood felt like he had found something even more valuable than success. He had found a place where people truly cared for each other. Please subscribe channel for Clint Eastwood. Respect. Thanks.